Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Meghan Roswick, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about managing fluid retention. Now, my experience with fluid retention started about 3 years ago. I have dealt with fluid retention in the past during open heart surgeries, specifically my Fontan. However, I haven't dealt with it in many years. I'm not quite sure what caused it or what triggered it, but I can kind of give you a little bit of background as to what was going on when it started. About 3.5 years ago, I went to Colorado and I tried a trick off of a jump skiing, and I over-rotated and I ended up fracturing my spine. Luckily, it was a stable fracture. However, I was still in a lot of pain. My exercise became much more limited because, I was just in so much pain I really wasn't able to move around that much. And with that, I kind of started developing not great habits. I started eating a lot of processed food, a lot of junk food, and on top of that, I really wasn't exercising that much. About a year after I started noticing a lot of the fluid starting, I was getting to the point where it was just so incredibly uncomfortable. Everything was so much more difficult, and even trying to bend down to pick something up made me feel like I was being suffocated. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't really sure because I had never dealt with it before, and so I went to the cardiologist and asked if there was any way that I could get diuretics. Now, at first, they were a little hesitant to give me any diuretics, which is understandable because doctors really want to make sure that you really need diuretics before you go on it. So we kind of went through all of the options and possibility as to what was causing my fluid. After we exhausted all of our options, the cardiologist agreed to put me on aldactone and Lasix. And I had never really taken these medications, at least since I was going through my surgery, so I really had no idea what to expect. Within a matter of days after starting Lasix and aldactone, my fluid, especially in my neck, changed dramatically. Cue picture somewhere over here, before and after, for a few days. I was shocked. And for the first time in a long time, I was able to actually bend down without feeling suffocated. And I honestly stood up and just started crying. I knew that wasn't going to solve all of my problems, but in that moment, to have that sort of relief is indescribable. I knew that on the outside I looked different with all the fluid on me, and I knew people were noticing because they were actually coming up to me and asking me if I was okay. And now I'm very grateful and happy that people ask me if I'm okay. But for me, it was kind of validated in the fact that something was wrong. My cardiac function was in question for the first time that I had ever remembered in my life because fluid retention was not my baseline. So cardiology decided that it was probably a good idea to schedule a catheterization. Now, before the cath, this was probably the scariest cath for me that I had ever had. Caths in general are terrifying to me. I don't know why. That in itself is just scary. And so this time I was really nervous because I knew I was off baseline. I knew that they were looking at my heart. And I really had to be ready and prepared to receive news that my cardiac function was declining. In the cath, they did stent my LPA, and my pressures were a little bit more elevated than they usually were. However, I was still in good range. And so for me, that was a huge relief, and I felt like, okay, let's tackle this. Let's figure out why I'm having fluid retention, and let me try to at least manage it. My thought was not, how am I going to stop this? My thought was, how am I going to improve it? And how am I going to optimize it and figure out a way to give my circulatory system the best chance that I could possibly have to do well. That's a lot to ask, only one ventricle to do. Now, with optimization in mind, my top 5 fluid management tips. Now, when I talk about movement for being a tip, what I'm talking about is exercise, stretching, and massage. Now, those 3 things are my key to really truly help me get that fluid moving. For me personally, I keep track of my movement, my steps, my exercise, even my heart rate through my Apple Watch. I've had Fitbits in the past, and it really helped me kind of understand how much I was moving. And some days I'm really surprised with how little I'm moving. Some days I'm really surprised with how much I'm moving. So it really kind of helps me monitor how much movement I'm really getting. What I've been able to figure out for myself is that about 10,000 steps a day and 30 minutes of exercise is pretty much the minimum I need to be able to feel like I'm managing my fluid a little bit more. Anything below that, I feel like I'm starting to kind of slip a little bit off baseline with my fluid. And I honestly am shocked with the days that I am not moving as much and not getting 10,000 steps or 30 minutes of exercise with how different I feel. Stretching is a huge one. Stretching for me was something I really grabbed onto when I was trying to really kind of alleviate some of the pressure, especially starting out, because I really wasn't able to do much because everything was more difficult. But when I was stretching, that really still got everything moving. What my favorite thing to do, especially with stretching, was doing like a butterfly stretch while just watching TV, or a pike stretch, or a straddle, anything that's getting just pretty much every part of your body movement. By moving your musculoskeletal system is actually the one driving a lot of that fluid movement. So getting stretching and exercising is so incredibly important to really get that fluid circulating. Now, this kind of also goes with exercise as well, but rebounding is something that I learned is phenomenal for lymphatic drainage in general. Rebounding for me is something I would do on a mini trampoline literally in my living room while I'm watching TV. It's kind of the pattern with this. I would try to get all of this taken care of with the stretching and the exercising and the rebounding while watching TV. But I mean, sometimes you kind of need a distraction from feeling like really low and crappy because you're just fluid overloaded. Rebounding was something that I discovered when I was just researching how to improve the lymphatic system. A lot of what I do is kind of try to take what are normal, full-hearted people doing to try to take care of this, and how can I kind of modify it to help myself. And of course, this obviously needs to be approved by a doctor before you try any of it. But for me, I kind of just try to take something that I know that I have seen and read, and there are studies done for people with full hearts, and try to figure out if it's something that I can modify for myself to improve the same things that it's improving for people with a full heart. Rebounding was one of those things that I discovered. And so, I mean, there's so many exercises and studies and articles about rebounding and the positive effects on the lymphatic system. I have discovered that honestly, even after 20 minutes of this, I feel so much better. I put my hands like on top of my head to try to bring out the fluid in my hands too. And when I was rebounding, I was just lightly jogging. It wasn't anything too much. Rebounding was something that I would do in conjunction with taking diuretics. That, for some reason, worked tremendously, that combination. I would take diuretics and then wait maybe like 30 minutes and then just do 20 minutes on the trampoline of just jogging with my hands above my head. And I really felt like that really got stuff moving, if you know what I mean. And so that was awesome. And that was something I truly did every single night. Deep breathing is another tip that I have kind of recently really started focusing on, because I realized that my posture could be a lot better. It is not great at all. And there was one day that I was kind of standing with poor posture, and then I kind of stood up straight and breathed, and I was like, oh my gosh, my lungs expanded so much more. I feel like I got such a better deep breath. And so from that, I started really trying to be a little bit more conscious about standing up and getting a full deep breath, getting your lungs completely expanded, getting all the oxygen that you possibly can. But it's also beneficial to do when you are suffering from anxiety. When I'm exercising, sometimes it triggers anxiety for me. It can be a really frustrating topic because it's all about finding your limits. And sometimes that can be really nerve-wracking to have to kind of push yourself, try to find the limit, trying to tell yourself you're not pushing it too far, making sure you aren't pushing it too far, not knowing what to do if you push it too far. Are you going to be able to bring yourself back? Are you not pushing yourself enough? And that can cause a whole slew of anxiety. So for me, one of the biggest things I have started doing is truly just deep breathing. Just trying to focus, breathing in and out as deep as possible. That also has benefits for the lymphatic system as well. Get your body moving and really drawing that fluid to your thoracic duct for draining. Diet is another one that I feel like all of us probably know, and it's so hard to follow sometimes because a lot of the really delicious things are not so great for fluid retention, like salt and processed foods. Diet's something that I really struggle with because I love sweets, I love processed food, I love pasta, I love bread, I love just everything that is probably not the greatest for fluid retention. And so for me, I've kind of come to terms with moderation is key. And if I'm going to be kind of overdoing it on salt or processed foods, I'm going to have to expect that there's going to be a little bit of backlash from my body, and I'm probably going to end up waking up a little bit more swollen. And another thing that I don't think people necessarily realize is that another important part of fluid retention is making sure that you're properly hydrated. And that might sound counterproductive, but sometimes your body just tries to hold on to all the possible water it can because you're so dehydrated. And so making sure that you're properly hydrated and sticking to, if you and your healthcare team have already discussed like a fluid limit or something like that, making sure you really stick to it is extremely important in fluid management in your body. Now, my last tip isn't really necessarily just for fluid retention, but it's definitely really beneficial for people that are suffering from fluid retention, and that is documentation. So when I went to the doctors, my cardiologist asked me if I had kept track of what I was drinking, my weight, and I said, oh, no, I actually have not, but I will start doing that. And so that is probably the best tip I could even offer, is document symptoms, document what you're drinking, document your weight, document your exercise, document your symptoms. Literally document everything you possibly want to discuss with your doctor. That way you have it all on paper. And you can actually give your healthcare team this notebook that's tracking all of your symptoms and tracking everything that you're feeling. Not only will this be a great way to capture anything that's going on in your day-to-day life that you can make sure to talk to your doctor about, but it also reminds you to talk about these things with your doctor. So that way you're not going to an appointment and blank, because I think we've probably all been there before. I've definitely been there before, where there's a bunch of things I want to talk to the doctors about and I completely forgot about everything. I'm like, oh, darn it, I should have told them. So keeping a notebook, keeping a logbook is a great way to help create discussion with your healthcare team. Well, those are my top 5 fluid management tips, and I hope they helped you. Let me know down below if there's a topic you'd like me to talk about next. Be sure to check back, because next week I'll be discussing my experience with Fontan and leg pain.